Oh, hi everybody, meteorologist Joe Chaffee. It's a Friday night, the 22nd of March, 2019, as a major storm churns away in the Gulf of Maine, and it is not moving very much. And the snow amounts, very interesting. I have a NOAA site that I'm going to bring up in a moment, and we're going to take a look at the different snow amounts, and it's amazing the impact of elevation that you can get over relatively short distances and see these, sort of huge disparities of snow between one spot and another. And we mentioned last night that some areas were going to outperform, and some areas were going to underperform, and elevation was going to be the driver through all of this. This is so typical of storms this time of year, particularly when you have a situation like this where you really didn't have any cold air. You had, remember, we had quote unquote the bad high that went out off the New Jersey coast and offshore, so you had east and southeast winds for a while, and you really at best had some what we would call dirty cold air maybe in eastern Canada, if it was even that, and that this is all being driven by dynamics from the top of the atmosphere down. So we're going to take a look at what's happening tonight. First off, I want to bring up the Storm Prediction Center's severe weather map, if only because there was a little bit of a little odd happening today that really didn't gain a whole lot of attention, but there was that second upper air trough that was swinging around, and that moved through areas across southern Pennsylvania, now moving over through southern New Jersey down into southeastern Virginia. And there were some low-top thunderstorms. They only were up to about 15 or 18,000 feet, but there were several severe thunderstorm warnings that were issued in Maryland, and we have some storm reports from that. Also, we do have an area of severe weather risk in West Texas. Excuse me. A marginal to slight risk that the Storm Prediction Center is indicating there inside a general area of thunderstorms that runs from Texas on up through Colorado and Utah. And of course, you see the area of just general thunderstorm risk that they threw up there for Virginia, Maryland, and southern New Jersey. The radar that I pulled up at 7 o'clock tonight on my TV show had actually some pretty good looking pop-up heavier downpours that showed up in southern New Jersey. So just kind of a lot of odd things happen with these spring storms, and oftentimes it's not always easy to follow. Now, I put the link up to this inside the chat. This is where you can pretty much take a look at storm reports, and you'll see them list on the side. There's a legend there to tell you the color, what those storm reports mean, whether it's winter weather or tornado or hail or wind. But I want to go show you a couple of them that are very, very close by. So we have I'm going to get a little closer here. This is in Vermont. Now, this is a town called Waitsfield, Vermont, probably 4 miles west-northwest of Waitsfield, Vermont. 1.6 inches of snow. That's their 24-hour snowfall through. This was reported at 8 a.m. Meanwhile, we have a report this evening from a location not too far from there. Now, I don't know what fell at the other town during the day, but Fayston, I'm sorry, let me make sure you guys can see that. Fayston, Vermont, 17 inches so far. And then drop down to Waitsfield, it's 2 inches from 7 a.m. this morning. And then jump up to Moortown, Vermont, which is at 1,500 feet, okay? So we really don't know the elevation of all these spots. But one thing I do know is that when we pull up some of these storm reports tonight, you're going to see that all the big amounts are areas that have elevation. Here they're 1,500 feet up, 14 inches. Here's another spot probably not that far up. 2 miles north of Northfield, Vermont, 2.1 inches, and Montpelier, 4 inches there as of 11 this morning. So I'm sure some of these amounts are going to go higher. Here's a spot, Waterbury Center, Vermont, 3.5 inches at the 900-foot elevation. Now let's go over to the New York State side, because we do also have some rather interesting numbers. Here's a spot, Windsor, New York, 980 feet, 1.5 inches, and that was as of 9:15 this morning. Walton, New York, 6 inches, and that also was at 9:15. And Fraser, New York, at 6 inches. Now, I don't know what the elevation of these spots are. Some of these obs will have elevation marks and some won't. It's 2 miles southeast of Delhi, New York, 6 inches. Here's Halcottsville, 3.5. That was at 7:30 this morning, 2,500 feet. And Westkill at 3 inches. Then even down into northeastern Pennsylvania, Walker Lake, 3.8. 1 mile north of Indian Orchard, 2.8. Richmondale, 3.5. There were a few amounts here that I put 4 inches up in Staruka, Pennsylvania. So you get the idea. 1.5 inches with 980 feet of elevation, and that's southeast of, that's at Windsor. West of Binghamton, only 0.6 of an inch there, and National Weather Service office at Binghamton, 1.5 inches. So you can use the link to pull up all these snow reports. And then when we go south, I want to go down into the Washington, D.C., Baltimore area, because we had reports here of hail accumulation here at 1 mile northeast of Bailey's at Crossroad, Virginia. Hail accumulation there. Flooding near Manassas, at 3 miles southwest of Manassas. Leesburg, Downtree near Riverside Parkway and Deerfield Avenue. Thunderstorm wind damage. Not too far from Germantown. Thunderstorm wind damage with Downtree on the 7800 block of Ivy Mountain Terrace. So that's right outside the Washington, D.C. area. So this is all from, of course, some of these areas are dealing with the heavy rains of yesterday, where some spots north and west of Washington and Baltimore got 5 inches plus of rain. And, of course, now you had these low-top thunderstorms that went through today. Here's another spot, 2 miles west-northwest of North Beach. Now, they reported it as snow. It was hail, really. 1/2 inch of hail accumulation there. So very interesting that we had these thunderstorms. Here's a report 1 mile west of Baltimore Inner Harbor with a 55-mile-an-hour wind gust at 5:45 p.m. So, bookmark this site. This comes in pretty handy. You can get some storm reports as they come in. Oftentimes, there's something, a system is when a weather event is going on, it's a little, you find yourself trying to find information. It's not always readily available. So at least when these plots come in, they go on this interactive map, and you can move the geography and go all over the place around the U.S. So here's our storm on the latest surface plot from 21Z, 5 o'clock this afternoon. We have a 976 low sitting in the Gulf of Maine. You can see all the isobars are beautifully wrapped up behind it. That upper trough is just about moving through. It's been rather gusty, but the winds are going to pick up overnight. I think we're going to see gusts up to about 40. The wind advisories are not posted. The Weather Service stating even yesterday that they thought that this was all going to wind up being slightly below criteria. It might be due to the fact that the storm is intense enough, but unlike back in the system in early March when we had a 1040 plus high come down into the northern plains, the high pressure here is 14 millibars weaker. So that's probably where the difference lies between the low and the high. You have a large pressure change, relatively short distance, but the gradient, that 14 millibars, that extra 14 millibars of pressure change probably makes a big difference between a 30-mile-an-hour wind versus a 40-mile-an-hour wind versus a 50-mile-an-hour wind. So it's going to take a while for this to pull out. The gradient's probably going to start to slowly relax later Saturday afternoon and Saturday night, and then we'll wait for the change as the winds shift over to the west come Sunday. And of course, you know, this front kind of trails down into Virginia, on and through northern Tennessee. It's going to push further south. You can see the temperatures behind it. They're not particularly cold. They're in the 30s and 40s, so we're not really talking about a very cold Arctic, Canadian/Arctic air mass like we had back earlier this month when that Great Lakes monster went up there. As that air that came down behind it was indeed very cold. Excuse me, I'm taking some coffee here so I can get a little energy. We also have a weather system coming into the west, a front that's swinging out of a storm that's off the west coast, and that's bringing precipitation into the west. And here's the radar view tonight. Still getting the western edge snows up in Maine, so they're having the usual party up in interior parts of Maine, western and northern Maine. Just going to get there 8 to 12 or whatever it is they're going to wind up with. And then you have the snows being generated by the upper low in upstate New York, and there are still some bands working their way southward. So when these bands come in, especially if you get in the green-colored echoes here, that's when you're going to put it down during the overnight. I was looking at some of the soundings too. The temperatures, and I'm assuming when I pull up the temperatures where I think there's some kind of elevation at work, you could tell because those temperatures that come up on the sounding are in the upper 20s. Whereas if you move it into an area where, for example, if you put it anywhere up the Hudson Valley, the temperatures are several to many degrees higher. So another instance where, as I said, with elevation making a difference. We've got snow showers back across Pennsylvania scattered around. And then what's left of the line of showers and thunderstorms now moving, and it's weaker now, moving off the Delmarva Peninsula and into southeastern Virginia. We've got some showers and one or two heavier showers moving through southern New Jersey, some snow showers back into parts of West Virginia, and this will play itself out overnight and then pull out tomorrow morning, and it's just going to be a matter of waiting for the wind to relax. In the Rockies and in West Texas, now there's your severe weather tonight. If you're watching, it's 7:41 Eastern time, so be sure you want to check your local radar and your local National Weather Service office for any of the latest watches and warnings, should there be any up, by going to weather.gov. This is a dated radar if you're watching this on a replay. But we're seeing some showers and thunderstorms up into northwest Texas, and also heading up, we've got some heavy downpours and maybe a couple of possible thunderstorms in there in western Kansas, some precip back through parts of Colorado and Utah, and then of course we have rain in California from San Francisco northward on up into Oregon and Washington, and that's that next weather system that's coming in. Back to our storm in the east, I just want to show you on the satellite loop, you see the rotation in the Gulf of Maine, so there's where there's the center of the storm at the moment, and then you have that that second upper trough that's swinging around underneath it and lifting, gradually going to be, that upper low is just going to take over, and you're going to wind up eventually kicking the whole trough out to the east. So let's see how the NAM handles this tonight. And there's your low as we move through the overnight hours, just straddles the coast of Maine, goes in well west of Nova Scotia, by the way. And you see how the snows are going to increase. They're going to increase in coverage and intensity during the first part of tonight, and then they start to diminish and disappear, so that by 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, it's just about done, except for up in Maine and parts of northern Vermont and New Hampshire. Then they just gradually disappear. High pressure builds in. The gradient is still on the tight side, but starts relaxing tomorrow night. The high settles off the North Carolina coast. Now here's where we are for Sunday, where the wind is going to turn more westerly, and that should allow temperatures to warm up. That's the other thing about this time of year. You might have noticed that today. If you happen to be in an area in eastern Pennsylvania out to southern New England, if you happen to be where the sun came out, the temperature immediately jumped up into the upper 40s, and then as soon as clouds and rain took over, it dropped back down into the lower 40s. The atmosphere reflexively this time of year wants to warm up any chance it gets. So you put the sun comes out even for an hour or two, and that could immediately boost up the temperatures. Sunday, if we have sun for most of the day, and I think we should, with the west wind, I think you're going to see a lot of areas climb up into the upper 50s and low 60s. Now here comes the next low for Monday, and it really looks to me very unimpressive. You have a cold front and a wave on that front is what it boils down to. The model is pushing, and it seems to be fairly consistent on all the models tonight. You're going to get this high coming down. More of the cold air push is over the Great Lakes and into the Northeast, which brings in the colder air a little faster. But at the same time, it also is suppressing the wave and as it moves eastward. And you'll notice here, this is a rather weak low that is moving east. By the time we get to Monday afternoon, you've got an area of rain and then a little fringe snow activity on the northwest edge. This is a big nothing, I think, as it goes out. And then, of course, the low just kind of marches along. The upper air really sets the table here. You're going to see the difference between what just happened and what's going to happen. So rolling back, pay attention to the two short waves here. This is Wednesday. One in Kansas, another one dropping through the Great Lakes. They phase. This creates that coastal low that moves up. And then you have this third short wave that came down today. This is what caused the low-top thunderstorm activity down in Maryland and in parts of northeastern Virginia. That upper low lifts up. You see how it just kind of lifted up the two lead short waves that phased? That lifted it up into the Gulf of Maine, and now the two will just kind of become one and get kicked away to the northeast. Now notice the difference with the next system. Here's your upper low in Kansas. This represents the system for Monday and Monday night. You've got a short wave that's coming around in the northern jet, but it's not, there's a big difference between a short wave that looks like this, okay? I'll back it up further. That looks like this versus this, okay? There's hardly any definition to it. When I show you on the wider view, you'll see where what's happening in Canada that's different this time around. But you've got this upper vortex that's up there, and it's kind of like this big bowl that's dropping down. It's keeping the flow northwesterly across the Great Lakes and the Northeast. So that short wave coming east has nothing to phase with. It just moves along and just sort of gets squashed as we head toward Monday night into Tuesday morning. This means that the system is not going to be able to do very much of anything except follow the directive of the vortex to the north. And the full North America view will show it better here. All right, so here's your system that we just went through for Thursday night into Friday. Your short wave comes down from the north, phases with it. Second short wave comes now. You get this intensification in the Gulf of Maine, so that pulls out. Now you've got another vortex forming up in northern Hudson's Bay, northern Labrador, but it doesn't. While it's sending a short wave down and around, it's very broad. Look at how circular that upper low is. It's like this bowl that's coming down, this big weight. So that short wave that's in the southern stream just gets squashed, and then out it goes. And then guess what? Nice big ridge pops up. Well, not a big ridge, but it was at least some ridging pops up into the eastern states later next week. So I think what's going to happen is whatever we get Monday from that system coming through is going to be on the light side, and then we'll wind up seeing cold temperatures Tuesday and Wednesday. Probably not much out of the lower mid 40s Tuesday, maybe mid to upper 40s Wednesday, and then Thursday and Friday we'll probably kick it up into the 50s and maybe even into the 60s by the time we get to Friday. And of course, by then, you might have another front making its approach for next weekend. That it doesn't really look like very much, because you notice the flow in the east is more west-southwest than anything else, and you've got the trough on the GFS anyway trying to go more in the west during the long range, which will keep things on the warm side of normal going into the first few days of the month of April. Now here we are at day 13, 14. The trough there in the west pretty dominant, so it's hard for me to see. The shot of chilly air we're going to get this week is going to last for a couple of days and then done. And my feeling was that as far as the coastal Northeast is concerned, the winter from as defined by snowfall is done. I know every day for the last few days, and this happens at the beginning of the season and at the end of the season, where you have the snow obsessed just trying to grab at every last straw that there is out there, and they were talking off the long range models about something in the 12 to 15 day time frame. You know what? I'm not seeing it. So if I'm not seeing it, it's not. I don't think it's there. If there was something worth speculating over in the long range, I would certainly give you my thoughts on it, but there really isn't anything. Here's the wide U.S. view as that storm pulls out in the east. Here's your front for Monday. There's your low on the GFS, and you can see how it drops down into North Carolina. Think back to a few days ago where the GFS was actually taking this low across upstate New York, and look where it's winding up, off the North Carolina coast. And this, by the way, on this run, you hardly get any precip at all. There's a couple of showers here Monday morning. The wave, the main action with that wave, if you want to call it that, goes off the North Carolina coast and then out straight to the east. And why wouldn't it? Well, you've got this, flat flow, west to east flow across the Great Lakes and over New England down to the Mid-Atlantic states. So out it goes, and now this high is going to settle off the coast. The only thing I would just say, and you always have to, you always have to put this footnote this time of year, is the fact that warm-ups are going to depend on location and wind direction. So if you are along the immediate coast, for example, or if you're in southern New England where you have a south-facing shoreline, you're going to want to pay attention to the wind direction, because you could have all this warming going on in inland New Jersey and Pennsylvania, down into West Virginia and Ohio, and you're sitting with a south wind, and temperatures are 15 to 20 degrees lower. Somebody's in the 60s and 70s, and you're in the 40s and 50s. That's just the way things work this time of year. By the way, the GFS for the last few runs with this wave going out, there is a frontal boundary that's left over down off the southeast coast down to Florida, and with the high going out where it is, a fairly strong high near Cape Cod, it does set up a northeast fetch from Virginia on southward for a couple of days. So there might be some strong wave action here, or some minor coastal flooding action from the Carolinas down to Florida later next week. You see that a lot this time of year, by the way these highs come out. And if you get a little wave that develops, it could tighten the gradient a little bit. But I just wanted to give that a minor mention. Meanwhile, while all that's going on, you'll notice from New York City west all the way back through the plains, you've got nothing but southwest isobars bringing warm air all the way up into the Great Lakes. And then here comes your next cold front, which just kind of falls apart by the time it gets here next weekend. Although you do have a high going to the north, and we'll see if that means if there's a stalled frontal boundary nearby, whether that winds up meaning precip late next weekend. But you know what? That's really it. There's not a whole lot here going on. Going in through the last days of March and the first days of April, I guess the old line of coming in like a lion, going out like a lamb, pretty well holds in the way the models are setting up. Really is giving you the feel that maybe this year spring is just going to be, kind of normal. Always starting off chilly, obviously, given where we are on the calendar. you have volatility, but you wind up with higher highs and higher lows, just kind of a gradual upswing in temperatures. In fact, I'm going to bring up, I'm just kind of curious as to what the GFS does with temperatures this week. Here's Tuesday, which is 40s. This is at 2 o'clock in the afternoon temperatures, 40s down into southern Virginia, and then you start to see the 50s into southern Virginia, but still 40s over us. Again, that would be reflexive this time of year. You get to Thursday, and now you start to see some 60s pushing up into Virginia, certainly 50s up to New York City, and then by Friday you've got 60s probably up to New York City. So it makes sense, and you can see the warm air goes all the way up into the Great Lakes with temperatures in the 50s and 60s there. And on Saturday, before the next front, you've got 70s into Delaware and Virginia, North Carolina. You've got temperatures in the 70s there, so that's the warm push ahead of whatever next cold front that is going to be coming late next week or early next weekend. We'll deal with that when we get there, which is probably a wise thing to do. So let me come back to the board real quick. It's a Friday night, which means that with weather conditions this weekend not being too bad, once we get through whatever wind issues we get through, the audience is a bit on the light side today, but it's nice. Smaller crowds are good. I'm just happy everybody's here. Yes, the Northern Lights. This is a good thing. Thank you, Earl Warren, for reminding me. There's a geomagnetic storm that's going to be happening, and I've got friends that live up near Lake Ontario, and anytime one of these things happens, some of the pictures of the Northern Lights that they get to see up there are just spectacular. We rarely down to New York City have I've ever seen it. Certainly where that I can remember. I don't ever remember seeing them this far south. Maybe I was never paying attention too much over it. But this weekend, Saturday night, skies are going to should be mostly clear. So you will have no interference. If you are in upstate New York or up in northern New England, pay attention, because you might have a nice, interesting light show to watch. Does the St. Lawrence run into Lake Erie? Jeremiah Noonan, Ontario, Ontario. Then you have the Niagara Falls into Erie, but the St. Lawrence goes into Lake Ontario. Ashante Stevens, I'm seeing above average sea surface temperatures across the Atlantic. Well, I would just say this with regards to that. That is probably a function of the fact that this winter season there have been very few storms out in the Atlantic, particularly south of 40 degrees north. Now, my experience when watching water temperatures, one of the things I would be careful about is reading too much into water temperatures now for anticipation of things 3 months from now, because all it will take is 1 or 2 gale centers to upwell that water, and suddenly you can go very quickly from being above average to below average. So I would just put that asterisk there with regards to looking at the water temperatures now. But this is what happens when you have pretty much a storm-free Atlantic south of 40 degrees north for much of the wintertime. There just were not many gale centers out there to upwell the water and move it around, and as a result you do have warmer than average water temperatures, but no guarantee it's going to be like that in May or in June. Let's see. Ray C., I walked past you last Saturday in Hicksville. Oh, you were in Five Guys. I was actually, I was having lunch with a friend of mine, Ray, at, you should have come up and said hi. We walked right by Five Guys. I was up having lunch with a friend of mine over at Red Lobster. My buddy Craig, he had his train set up, and I went to take a look at them, and then we grabbed a bite to eat. But you should have said hi. Anytime anybody, if you see me in public, don't hesitate to come up and say hello. I'm a pretty friendly guy, and as you said, I was wearing my, I had my my comfy flannel jackets. I have 3 flannel jackets, one red, one blue, and one a grayish green. And they are incredibly comfortable. They are very warm in the wintertime, and they breathe so that if I have it on a spring day where the temperatures move up, I don't get hot, which is great. I'm sure if I wore it when it's over 70 would be a problem, but they are great at breathing. Chuck Cardillo, he's the Snow King today because you have 11 inches so far where you are in the Catskills, 2,800 feet above sea level. And that would do it. Walton is 1,400 feet. Thanks for letting me know. I'm going to make sure I take a look at these numbers tomorrow, and I'm going to want to see what the 48-hour numbers are for some of these stations to get snow totals. Some places are going to do quite well with this, and others will probably be a bit disappointing. Again, always typical with these high elevation events. Upstate New York and states include Vermont, New Hampshire, will have the best chance of seeing the lights and know what chart shows, but they might also make an appearance in New York City. Let's keep our fingers crossed. I would love to see it because the pictures that I've seen from my some of my friends that are up near Lake Ontario, it's just absolutely amazing. The colors, and I would like to be up there once when the Northern Lights are extremely active. The magnetic field has 2 breaches pushing the heat up into the north, and also water creating. I'm sorry, your chat just kind of flew away from me. I lost the end of that paragraph. I'm sorry about that. Anthony Orr, the Australians, 2 landfalling hurricanes at the same time. You know what? Unfortunately, I can't pull up those satellites right away. I have to check. I know where I can find them, but I want to find out from Tropical Tidbits where if I can put them up in the live stream. I just don't want to do it without asking. But if I can, I'll try and bring it up on the next live stream. Unless I can find the GOES on the southern hemisphere. Let's see. Let's try it that way. GOES southern. Okay, they do have one. All right, let's see. You know, I can't see on these thumbnails. What exactly am I looking at? All right, that's not far enough south, so that's not good. Let's see. Goes east. Nope. Hang on there, folks. Just give me a second. Oh, okay, so this is... Alright, so this is Eastern Australia. And let's see if I can get Western Australia. Nope. Alright, you know what? This is going to require me to do a little bit of digging. And... yeah, they have the shot of Eastern Australia. I can't see a shot of Western Australia. So let me see if I can do a little digging on around to pull up some shots. Maybe I could, if I do a live stream tomorrow or Sunday, we can, I'll have them there to take a look at. Sorry, I wish I had known. I wish I had known a bit earlier. Let's see. Does the weather move east to west in south? Weather systems, Reavers, I can pull it up for you. Hang on one second. Hang on a sec. And you'll see for yourself. The rotations are opposite. But... so here's South America, for example. Actually, you know what? We can pull up the Australia map anyway. And see what's on here. Now remember, they're going into their autumn, but the GFS, you can see it here. They're your two hurricanes, showing a pressure of 935 millibars and 919 coming into the northwest coast of Australia. The one that's on the northwest coast of Australia, I believe that's Hurricane Veronica. So that's almost a Cat 5 there. The other one is coming inland right now. I'm not sure what the name of this one is. But if you notice the gale center, there's a gale center off southern Australia that's moving from west to east. So the hurricanes that are up in the north, close in the tropical regions from 20 south to 10 south, they're going to move from east to west with the trades. And then you've got the storms in the south off southern Australia. Now they're moving with their jet stream pattern. Moving from west to east. They're just rotating clockwise around lows and counterclockwise around highs, and there you go. But they, you know, it's a little weird when you don't look at this stuff on a daily basis. You're so used to looking at loops and maps at our latitudes, and then you at first glance when you look at the southern hemisphere. You catch yourself a little bit, but there you have it. So two major hurricanes there coming in to Australia, and I can at least take a look at. If you go to Tropical Tidbits, by the way, and go to current storms, the one that is moving into the weaker of the two is Trevor. Top winds are 105 knots, so 120 miles an hour, and Veronica is the powerhouse moving inland. That is, I'm looking at least on the new advisory, so it must already be inland because they have it carried at 90 knots, and then it drops to 80 knots, 65 into 30 knots. So it's in its weakening phase, I believe. Trying to see what the latitude, longitude. They just give a wind forecast. I can't see. I don't see where the latitude, longitude forecast is here. The initial position was at 19.2 south and 116.9 east, moving south at 2 knots. So there must be some weakening going on because it's interacting with probably the circulation, and the very slow movement is causing it to interact with the land area. So it's moving very, very slowly toward the south and southeast, and gradually going to make its way inland. Very, very interesting stuff here. 1,240 feet, says Chuck Cardillo for Walton. Thank you so much. Yes, the Coriolis does have its effect. The Coriolis is a big deal. Ryan Kane, how long will these winds last in Maryland? Well, you'll be gusty all night. The gradient's going to relax later tomorrow, but it's going to be windy for a good part of the night down your way. I wondered if you got any of those downpours and thunderstorms. Reaver, do I plan to issue a hurricane forecast? No, I don't. I'm not. I don't really get into the long range stuff. It's above my head. I've never been able to get my head around it. Every time I've tried, I've failed miserably at it. I just can't. There's too much stuff. It's highly technical, and my brain doesn't want to absorb it anymore. So you know what? I leave it to everybody else. The El Nino, the active El Nino right now would certainly suggest that the activity might be maybe a bit subpar, and perhaps we are like we were due for a subpar hurricane season. A subpar snow season for parts of the Northeast, or at least certainly where my area. Maybe we're due for a subpar hurricane season. But one of the things you got to be really careful with is a subpar season is a measure of the total number of storms. It's not a measure of the total number of landfalling storms. You could have a subpar season and have a Category 5 hurricane like you did with Hurricane Andrew in 1992, which was an absolute subpar season from the standpoint of total storms. It was well below average. You could have a really active, a totally off the wall above normal season, and wind up in a year where we have had a couple of them in this decade where you had very, very active hurricane seasons and very few landfalling hurricanes in the United States. The two things don't necessarily go together. Sometimes they do. Sometimes you will have a really active season with a lot of landfalling tropical storms and hurricanes, and sometimes you'll have a subpar season where nothing winds up making landfall. So my view on those things is basically I just take them as they start developing. I really don't focus too much on whether it's going to be a busy year or whether it's not going to be a busy year from the standpoint of the total number of storms. Let's see. William Uber, hope you're having a good night tonight. Michael Piero, Scott Briller, nice to see you. We have a new follower in Erica. Okay, is she on here? Well, because I don't see any comments, but if you are on here, Erica, a big hello and welcome to the YouTube channel. And at this point, I think it's time for me to say goodnight. It is 8:10 Eastern Time. So again, if you're watching this and you're looking at some of the areas that are in Texas with severe weather, remember that this is it's a dated radar, so you want to go to your local National Weather Service office by going to weather.gov and checking out the latest radar and checking out to see if there are any watches and warnings in effect. My weekend plans are to take a break, and I don't know whether I will live stream tomorrow or live stream on Sunday, but I am going to take some time off this weekend. If it looks like it's going to be really quiet on Monday, who knows? I may take both days off. It looks like a quiet stretch ahead. I want to take advantage. The winter gets me tired, and the brain gets like jello. It gets to a point sometimes where I can't even complete sentences. So thanks as always for everybody being here this week. We will be not doing the Joe and Joe show tonight on Facebook because my colleague Joe Rayo has the night off. So he will be back on Monday. So we'll bring back the Joe and Joe show again on Monday. I will actually, Reaver, if it goes to 60 on Sunday, I may actually try and fish. I may head out to a couple of the local fishing holes and see if the bass are awake yet. So I might do that. Just trying to think if there's anything else that's going on of consequence. No, there really isn't. So let's wrap it up here. Have a great night and a great and safe weekend. If we don't see you at some point over the weekend, we will see you next week. Jeremiah Noonan, I watched a couple of videos on YouTube of the coastlines in the south losing water along the coastline. With respect to what? Well, Jeremiah, hold that thought, okay? Because I really do have to go. So on the next live stream, you bring it up again, or you can even message me on Facebook, and maybe get into it a little bit more in terms of what you're saying. Did Texas have a mass fish death in one of its rivers? I don't know. Those kind of things do happen up and down the coast and also in the Gulf Coast. There was a red tide problem, I know, in Florida that was impacting the wildlife. Robert Flanders, I will be smoking a cigar for you, okay? I promise. All right, everybody have a great night. We'll see you either over the weekend or next week.